When you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Um, Probably an artist, a painter, or illustrator, and a veterinarian.
And how did you realize that writing was your
That writing was my art.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of accidental. We didn't have much by way of creative writing work in elementary school or high school, but towards the end of elementary school, one teacher assigned a personal essay, which was really novel, and I wrote some really just silly but very lively thing about being a fresh big sister to a baby, and the tussle between the urge to go comfort him in the middle of the night and the urge to run away, and I read it out loud in class, and it caused a sort of shift in my personality. I was very introverted, but reading this, I suddenly became quite the performer, and frankly just enjoyed that transformation and probably the attention from the teacher. And I think that planted the seed that there's this other sort of direct way than painting.
What grade? I'm sorry, what grade was this?
Probably 6th grade, 5th grade.
Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, to have found out that early.
Well, I wouldn't say that I decided at that point. I think it's planted.
Right.
I would never have thought of being a writer at that point, but it stuck with me.
And tell me about how this flame developed from there.
So it was not by any means a steady thing. I didn't write for myself or for anyone else until much, much later. And as I said, there weren't any creative writing or even essay classes. It was just academic writing. But at some later phases, I got more and more disaffected. As an adolescent, I wrote some parables against conformity and fundamentalism and things like that were, very, very bad, but very righteous. And that got me started again. And then I started writing some terrible poetry, and I think that sealed it. And that sort of, from that point, it was pretty steady. That was into late high school and college.
And were you primarily writing in Hebrew or English?
It's funny. I think at that point I was already writing, even though it started in Israel. I was writing in English. That stuff I was writing in English. I wonder why, but yeah.
Can you compare the experience of writing in Hebrew to writing in English?
Do you mean right now?
Over the course of your life. Have you done creative writing in Hebrew?
No. Well, I've started doing a little bit more of that recently, and it's a strange process because even though it was my primary language growing up, to some extent, we spoke English at home because I was raised by American parents in Israel, and I was born in the States. But now, certainly, most of the time I speak in English. The world I'm in is English speaking. So when I write in Hebrew, I think I'm kind of rusty, to put it simply. It's a different kind of language. It's a little bit arrested. It's a little bit more formal than I would probably be. Than my Hebrew would be if I were in Israel. Now, when I go back and visit, people are sometimes struck by how formal some of my word choices are. It's almost like book language has stuck instead of my language evolving as it constantly is. Especially in Israel, the slang is constantly expanding and expanding.
I'm just thinking about what you were saying. So So how do you feel about English as opposed to Hebrew?
How do I feel about English? How do I feel about English as opposed to Hebrew? What exactly do you mean?
Well, I'm only fluent in one language, but I would imagine that there are different feelings and thought processes associated with different languages, and
Oh, sure.
and I'm just kind of digging, seeking if perhaps you can put words to what those feelings or thought processes are between English and Hebrew.
Okay, I understand. So I think just from a sort of aesthetic remove, I'm often struck by how much more economical Hebrew is. It can often take by far fewer words to say the same thing. You can put so much into one word. For "I will smile" would be just one word in Hebrew, as an example. But as far as the language that I choose to write in English, it's more of a map by I think adult development because I've in the United States, at least it's very late adolescence, and this is where I took my first independent stride, where the language that I asserted my independent life in. So I can express myself much more accurately in English for that reason. I swim more easily in it at the moment when I'm writing.
Do you feel more like an insider in English or in Hebrew?
That's also a tough question to answer because, as I said, I write much more fluidly in English, but I have a much easier time reading Hebrew. I have a pretty terrible attention span, but if I ever I find that I just haven't read in the longest time, which happens more often than I'd prefer to admit to, then the first thing I need to do is pick up a book in Hebrew, and that just sucks me in much more easily. I'm not as distracted by every little thing and every little thought. I can't say why. It might have something to do with that being tied to an earlier, less complicated in some ways time, more complicated in that. But that's just more direct in writing.
Mm-hmm. Have you spent, I assume you spent a lot of time reading English literature, and English literature is largely written in the ethos of Christianity. So does that jar on you, or does that do anything to you?
Does that what? I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, the phone problems. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm just thinking the history of English literature is overwhelmingly Christian. It's written out of the ethos of Christianity, at least until the last 100 years. So I'm wondering if you've spent much time reading the classics of English literature, and if you, as a Jew, how you relate to that. I haven't really delved very deep into classic writings, so I can't say I really encountered English language writing as primarily a Christian world. I'm sure what you're saying is true, but I can't. Yeah, got it. I read a couple of books on Jews in English departments the books were by Edward Alexander. He pointed out that the first Jew to become a professor of English literature in the United States was Lionel Trilling around World War II, which kind of shocked me when I read that. I would have thought it would have happened much earlier.
Yeah.
I read the most ridiculous thing about your book. I don't know if you saw this essay. It was on J-Books, and it was by Sanford Pinsker.